Okay, 1-800-449-8255, The Clark the Shark Show. I'm still trying to get through this review of this album. Who by Numbers. Um, I made two videos before here talking about The Who, my favorite band. Um, The Who, they give us all hope. They give anybody with a guitar or a set of drums hope that they can be in a band too. Um, Even though Entwistle's incredible and Roger's incredible, Pete and Keith give you hope, man, that you can be just like them and make a living just bashing away and acting zany and crazy like The Who. My favorite band. Put them all together, these four guys together, back in the 60s, back in the 70s, man. There was nothing like The Who. But anyway, Who by Numbers. I already talked about side one. Side two, Success Story, Entwistle song. I love it. Tells a story, some sort of mocking about, you know, making it big and all this stuff about, being on the road and life in the Who and how it's great, but it's not all great. And it's just a reality song, and I like it. They're all in love, man. Depressing, sad. Pete, midlife crisis or at 30. Great song, great melody. Now, the blue, red, and gray. Pete is actually torturing himself with this amazing little song. I love the blue, red, and gray. A little acoustic ditty. That's one of those songs when I was younger. It connected in my early 20s. And, a lot of people would say, well, it's not one of the greatest Who songs, but the way Pete is just in this self pity, self torture malaise, like misery, it's beyond sad. It's depressing, man, like many of these other tracks on this album, this amazing album, Who by Numbers. And then How Many Friends? It continues that theme of that depressing, misery, sad. Pete's just a spoiled brat rock star feeling like shit, drinking, him and Keith and just all the guys in the Who, just they love to just hate being in the band. Or something. They're big time rock stars. They're rich. They live in nice homes and cars. But rock and roll is making them miserable, man. And How Many Friends just beautifully captures it 1000%. What an amazing song. How Many Friends. Great lyrics. Just a great song. Should be one of the Who's greatest songs. And In a Hand or a Face. Another song is just depressing, sad. Pete's just pouring out his heart. It's got a sick, killer guitar riff. I love that song, In a Hand or a Face. These depressing, sad, angry, confused lyrics on The Who by Numbers are in total conflict with these other songs on the same album, like Slip Kid, Squeeze Box, and Success Story. But in a way, it all goes together. It all fits together like just another Who rock opera, man. The Who by Numbers, maybe my favorite album by this incredible band, The Who. Um, I love The Who by Numbers. It's a miserable, sad collection of depressing songs about growing old, aging, and being in a rock and roll band. And it's reality. These lyrics are some of the original reality, like way beyond Bob Dylan or anybody. Pete is nailing it with this album. It's even, in a weird way, better than Quadrophenia, although Quadrophenia is a classic, man, with all those keyboards, and it's an amazing story about the guy Jimmy, and I'll get into that album in another review. Quadrophenia, incredible album by The Who. And like I said, man, I love The Who not because they're such great musicians. They are great, and in their own way, they're really incredible. But the Who are no Zeppelin, and the Who are no Rush, and the Who are no Beatles. The Who are no Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or Grateful Dead, or David Bowie, or, the Who are the Who. They are their own thing, man. In some weird way, the Who are like Uriah Heep. These two bands both have this funny, melancholy sadness. David Byron, he could have been singer of the Who, or he could have just hung out with the Who and backstage drinking with the Who or something. I bet he did, man. The way Uriah Heep is just always funny in their interviews and they're acting retarded. That's how the Who is. They're real people, man. You know, the Who are real, but when they get on stage, man, and start rocking, you're rooting for them. Maybe they're not the world's greatest band, but there's something world's greatest about the Who. And you can't put your finger on what it is, but they're loud and they're sweaty and they smash their gear. And they're not tight and they're not in tune. They sound terrible. They're always having a problem. Their amps are going out or their guitars getting unplugged. The mic stand's falling over, the cymbals falling over. Something's always wrong with the Who. And that's why I fucking love them, and they're my number one band of all time. Because they are human. They are you and me. The Who is you. The Who is me. And I grew through my life, my 57, 58 years on this planet. I read the Bible and Jesus and God, but the Who, Pete Townsend really is like my Jesus. And these four guys are like my God. I worship them. I love the Who, man. And the depressing lyrics, just this sadness that they convey on the Who by Numbers is like no other Who album. This was a special project here. Now, they continue these themes on Who Are You, which is another great album. Who Are You is a classic, like Who's Next or Tommy or Quadrophenia. It's a great album. I don't know why all these reviewers who review the Who, they don't put Who Are You in the top, It's up there, man, with all that great shit. Sister Disco and Had Enough and all those lyrics are as depressing and sad and confused and angry and insane as the Who by Numbers. And nobody writes lyrics like the Who. And then that album, Face Dances, they put like a Frank Zappa twist on it. That album is interesting. I mean, it's not really that great or good, but I like it for whatever reason. Those weird ass, how can you do it alone? Like lyrics that Frank Zappa would blush, man. That's interesting, that album. And I even like It's Hard, because It's Hard revisits this album, The Who by Numbers, where Pete sounds kind of depressed. He's getting old and he's just keeping it real, man, with his reality lyrics and poetry. And I even like the way It's Hard isn't that good, because the Who are like, look, man, we're putting out a crappy album where we feel like shit and we're talking about the world and we don't care what you think. It's kind of like the Who by Numbers in a way. It's, it's not like it, it's different, but you can tell it's the same band. And Pete, he's got that depressed, angry, getting old, poetry, lyrics. He's just pissed off. He doesn't know why. Pete needs to come to Jesus, man, and find the Lord or God, or get out of that Mayor Baba crap or something, because he's unhappy. But that's the way I want Pete. I want Pete to be miserable, unhappy, and angry, and writing these pissed off, confused lyrics that are just sad, like he's having a nervous breakdown, like he's about to have a heart attack. Like the song Dreaming from the Waist, he just feels like he's gonna have a cardiac arrest. But he just wants to go out and manifest. I love Pete, man. I love the Who. I love their lyrics, their reality. They were always reality, even in the 60s with Substitute. and I'm a Boy and all that stuff back then. And Tommy, the way Tommy's talking about you and me, man, our dysfunctional lives, and conveyed like through a mystical dream, of acid and just weird shit. The Who, man, they take the cake, brother. I love the Who. At 1-800-449-8255, the Clark the Shark Show. And the Who by Numbers, probably my favorite Who album. Admittedly, it's not the greatest Who album. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give this album a 10 because Clark the Shark loves the misery, the lyrics, the way the Who are trying to communicate. They're fumbling around, but this album has great guitar, great drumming. It's got great Who music on it. It's like a little mini Quadrophenia. So I accept Who by Numbers, and it's really stripped down. There's not a lot of keyboards. It's this album is really cool, man. I like this album. And I would put it up there with all the great Who albums. Who Are You, Who's Next, Quadrophenia, The Who Sell Out, Tommy, Live at Leeds. Even the Who's second album with I Need You, where Keith is just shredding the drums. There's energy on that album too. And of course, the Who's first album in '65, when they were just kids, is so amazing. The way the Who just bust out of the gate with that first amazing, awesome album with all those killer songs. And then in 1966, they grow with Evolution, and then they get into psychedelia, which is something the Kinks never really did. I wish Ray and Dave could have got more psychedelic, but those Kinks albums are good the way they are. But the Who, man, the Who by Numbers almost seems like a building, like this is an arrival album. Like all these years, the Who were building to this album. That isn't very good. It's not very catchy. But damn, if you really listen to this album, it's great because these miserable, depressing lyrics will rivet you. All these songs are like a type of poetry that, like, I can't describe it, man. I can't put my finger on why I love the Who by Numbers so much. I mean, the songs are not that good, but they're great lyrics. And, they're great songs when you think about what Pete was going through in 1975. Being an aging father, rock star. He thought he's getting old at 30, man. He doesn't realize today 30 is like a 15-year-old kid in 2023, man. And Pete's still around rocking today, man. He's probably a lot happier today than when he was 30, and writing classics like Slip Kid and Squeezebox. But then all these depressing songs like However Much I Booze, Dreaming from the Waist, They're All in Love. Oh my God, How Many Friends, Blue, Red, and Gray, and In a Hand or a Face. Pete just sounds bitter and aging and old and unhappy and miserable. And it's just melancholy, man. You've heard the Who song Melancholia? That's a nice song. And it was never released in its day. I wish it was, because it's one of the Who's most incredible songs. But this album, The Who by Numbers, really is melancholia. It captures a depressed, aging band that is confused and lost in the studio. It's like they don't know what they're doing. They're just like... And a lot of albums in 1975, 76 were like that by a lot of bands. A lot of bands at that time, it could have been the drugs and the alcohol, who knows, but a lot of bands began to struggle in the middle of the 70s, and the Who were one of them. But somehow this album is all perfect, and it's almost like in some moments, some moods you are in, this awkward album is not a struggle. And if you're in a bad mood and you're feeling down and depressed, I would put on the Who by Numbers, because this album won't cheer you up, but it will make you feel good. It will be like Prozac for your brain to know that a rock star like Pete Townshend felt this down and this depressed, that he would write an album, basically a Who basically a Pete Townsend solo album done through The Who. The great, well played, maybe not as great as Quadrophenia or Who's Next, but in its own weird, twisted way, it's even better. The Who by Numbers. And this is Clark the Shark at 1-800-449-8255. The Clark the Shark Show. The Wolfman Jack on crack. I'm coming to you live, 2023. Talking about The Who by Numbers. These lyrics, this poetry. This angry, kind of a shitty album, man. It's terrible. But it rivets you. You sit down and... I don't drink anymore, man. I quit in 1995. But if I was to drink a beer, I would sit down and listen to The Who by Numbers. And these lyrics from Pete. And this whole album, man, it captures a moment in time, in history of depression, confused sadness, malaise. The Who, it's morose. It's Pete getting old. It's The Who. This album does not reflect it, but it kind of does, in a way. In some weird, twisted way, The Who by Numbers is The Who's best album. And I can't put my finger on how or why, but I just know Pete was conveying, he was communicating through this album better than Bob Dylan, better than David Bowie or John Lennon. Pete goes to this next level, man, where he's almost like punk rock. Before punk rock really took on, Pete is a depressed, bloated, loser, alcoholic, spoiled brat, drunken, rock excess freak, kind of like Frank Zappa, but not talented like Frank Zappa, but he does things that Frank Zappa could never do, or Led Zeppelin or any other band could never do. This type of miserable depression, and yet it sounds kind of melodic and interesting. You put The Who by Numbers on, man, and you feel this album. I really connect with this album. I really love these songs at 1-800-449-8255. The Who by Numbers. Incredible, incredible album. This took 3 different videos because of the apps on my phone. But look at these 4 guys, The Who. Fucking great band. Greatest band ever. They pour their heart out in every song, man. They pour their heart out. This album pours its heart out, man. This album pours its fucking heart out to you. Dreaming from the waist. However much I booze. Fuck every song, dude. The blue, red, and gray. I love this album, man. And I like Who Are You. Who Are You is a more complete version of this, man. All these keyboards and shit, you know, it's kind of like Quadrophenia and Who's Next. But Who by Numbers is stripped down, man. This is so stripped down. It's just the raw Who. And it's like, they're not even that good. He's not what he used to be on this. But Pete's playing some nice leads, and Pete is trying to make this a good, interesting album. So is Roger and John, and they're all trying, man. But try as they may, this is not as good as Quadrophenia or Who's Next. But this has something those albums don't have, man. This has this tired, worn out, sad depression, dreaming from the waist. That's a song, man, that no Who album has but this. And Entwistle shreds that song live. And Pete's pouring his heart out here, man. In a hand or a face, he's just pouring his heart out. The Who by Numbers. I love this album. Clark the Shark, 1-800-449-8255. That's the VR.